That wasn't recording.
No, it wasn't. And welcome to the Uncommon Sense Podcast. I'm your host, Blake. Today, I've got two of my best friends, two guys who mentor me in different ways, and two people who I appreciate their opinions and look at their opinions very much so for any kind of guidance in my life. Mr. Parham Assadi and Mr. Business Naeem Adam. How you doing, boys?
Howdy.
Very good. Very good. Happy to be here.
Appreciate you guys so much taking time out.
It's
So
like
listen,
it's like an old training session, but like
a little bit, yeah, right?
Yeah.
It's like we're all back together in the gym again.
We were
feels that
a
way.
little too chatty when we were training, remember?
Yeah, but it was fun though. We all had a
Yeah,
good
it was-
time.
oh,
At least
man.
we all got done.
Best.
Y'all came out sore, so we got our.
That's it. We kind of sweating and sore.
I had shoulders. Now I'm just like
Good camera angle though. Got that.
Yeah, it's just camera
Kind of.
angles. That's
Yeah.
all it is. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you guys today because I mean, listen, we've all come from different backgrounds. We all done different things, but I consider you two guys to be, pretty successful in what you guys are doing. Naeem, you're living in that beautiful house out there in Lambert, and Parm, you're about to get out there too. You got that brand new home. Congratulations. But I wanted to talk about the culture of wealth. So being a black guy, coming from a family where my father was pretty much homeless until he was from the ages about like 16 to 20. My mother being, she's been always the good one with money, but she's the white one. But coming from and a lot of the other people I talk to who are like, black, who are in my, circle or whatever, we always talk about the fact that we weren't really taught about money in a certain aspect. We were taught that we save, that we hold on to money as much as we can, but we were never taught about, how to move money, how to make money work for us, what businesses to get into, how to do things. For you to go to school, I'm the first one in my family who went to university, who finished university. My cousin followed out, my cousin actually graduated before me because she's smarter than I am, asshole. But yeah, so the two of us were the first two. But in your guys' instances, I wanted to know because, I know Parham, your father started his own business when he came over. Your mother started working at Eaton Center, and Naeem, your sister's a doctor. Your parents are successful. But I wanted to talk about what your cultures, meaning like your home cultures, your maybe religious culture, but the culture you come in, Parham being Iranian, Naeem, you being Indian. What was the thought process like when you were younger? What were the things that your parents used to tell you about money? Like about attaining wealth or going and get a job? Like when you reach a certain age, what was the first talk about money that you had with your parents?
I mean, if you don't mind me, I'll go quick because it was like just rules in my house.
Yeah.
It was like make your bed, keep your RSPs full, and keep your TSFAs full,
Right.
and save your money. So those are rules when we were kids, and it was earn, work to get your money to do then what you want, and hopefully what you want is something that earns you more money down the road. So education, right. Self-help, courses of some kind, or working out, whatever it was. Yeah. Mm-hmm. As a simple, when I was really young, that's kind of what it is. And in our house, like everybody, like we were talking about money all the time. Like money, if you could replace money for sex in my house, because there was no affection shown anywhere. Sex was like super taboo. You can never talk about that. It didn't exist. I mean, in the Indian movies, it was only up till recently where you'll see like two characters kissing, to give you an idea. And but money was like my dad would come home and be like, "Hey, I bought this mouse. Guess how much? Guess how much?" It was just like everything was like. It was just always, we were always talking about money, to the point now that when I come to my home and I'm talking to Abe or talk to my friends and they're like, dude, fuck, I don't need to know the price of everything. I don't need to know about like all. I'm like, oh yeah, sorry. It's just such an easy thing.
It's ingrained.
Yeah. It's to talk about. It's not taboo. Whereas in Quebec culture, I feel like money is super taboo. Like you could talk about sex all you want. You could be like, oh yeah, you'll bump into a conversation where people are talking about, straight up penetration and talking about how it was. And then you start talking about splitting the bill, and everyone's just like, oh, excuse me, Whereas Parham and I we got this tendency where we're like, don't worry, we got it.
Yeah. I'd say, I mean, from my perspective, my parents went through a lot of hardship to get from Iran to Canada. I mean, my older sister, who's 5 years older than me, she was born in Montreal, Quebec, and essentially the bridge that helped us get over here is that my dad used to work for a France Aquarian company in Iran, and when the sounds of the revolution was starting, they essentially said, hey, I want to look for a new opportunity. And his older brother, knowing and working with these French companies, said, hey, where's the next best place that we can go to? And they heard of this place, Montreal. And this is like back in 1974 where they came over. So a lot of sacrifices were made. And my older sister was born, and then we went back to Iran. And I was born in 1979, where it was the Iranian Revolution. And it was a lot of hardship for them to pick up and sacrifice what they had built in Iran to escape a revolution and come over to Canada. So I think that sacrifice was a very big portion of what, financial security meant to my parents. It wasn't so much about teaching us the lessons of, how, what our finance is, how do you save, how do you go and generate income. For them, it was, don't go through what we went through, focus on school. Money is no object, don't take the same path we did. Don't think about money. We don't talk about money. Just focus on your education so that one day you can establish yourself in a career and then kind of start on your own. So it's very taboo in that perspective, maybe similar to Naeem, where there are some subjects. For us, it was like all subjects were taboo.
Classic.
So it's like not only sex or anything or politics or whatnot, but money was an object where my dad did not want us to be involved in any of the finances. Although when he came in and established himself in Montreal, he started off a trade as a cobbler, a shoe repairman. And as early as, I think I was maybe 7, 8 years old, my dad would ask me to go and open the store. So I would literally get up at 6 a.m, get dressed, take the public transportation, and go to his shop and unlock the door and essentially just sit behind the cash register between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 or 9:30, where he would come in, and I would essentially be customer service, taking in any of the shoes. So it wasn't so much about financial kind of education as much as work education, because I wasn't working for money. I guess, there was an arcade across the street, so I would get quarters, for the time I spent. But it was a difficult lesson for us to kind of open up a topic amongst our family members.
Okay.
It's funny. Cool. We got some parallels because our family too came from, they were born in Malawi, in sub-Saharan Africa, and then during a particular revolution in Africa that was not positive for a lot of people, but good for some local people perhaps, the Indians were kind of like kicked out of particular countries in Africa, and everything was taken away from them. So in Malawi, imagine my grandparents at that time, there was nothing there, and it was pretty much like my grandfather and his neighbor was like the prince / president of the country, and they're like, let's build roads together. And he collected this wealth through there, and one day he woke up, he was put in jail, everything was taken away from him, and he was shipped to London, England, where it's been like modernized and country. It's hard to just come up with an idea and develop. So he was lost there with nothing. Ends up coming to Canada, and that's where with all his brothers and his sons and my dad. That's why he was here. and they start another business, do really well as well. I mean, they become quite successful as well. And then some things start to happen in Africa where they feel like they can go back. So they end up leaving everything here, going back to Africa, and then starting again. So through that story, we learned that wealth comes and goes. Okay, wealth is something that will come and go. Do not base your happiness on money, because it will be going like this. And the beauty about it is that if you risk, you can make it back, and it's possible. Imagine a man in his like 18, 20 years old, barely any education, is able to amass millions of dollars, not once, and lose it and gain it again, but not once, twice, three times, and to a point where he had no dependency on money for happiness, and neither did my father, neither does my sister. My sister, yes, she's a doctor, she's making crazy amounts of money, but it has no bearing on her happiness or her life whatsoever. And I think that's a long lesson that we end up taking. It takes us a while to get there, because for me, over the last few years, like, money equals happiness. The more money I had, the more happy I was. And the more I perceived to be successful to others, then the more happier I would be, which was completely false.
Right. Understandable.
Yeah.
Like I'm a little bit the same. Like my dad's the same thing. So my dad got kicked out of the house at 13 years old, went to go live with his grandparents because his mother remarried. Ended up being homeless at 16, had a car. Luckily, he had spent all his money on a car, and then basically just drove himself to California, where he ended up going to school. He ended up going to junior college and playing with one of his buddies. Ended up taking, because he had a car, drove his buddy from LA all the way to New York, where his buddy had a football tryout. Just happened to, like, the guy asked him, like, hey, can you play football too? He's like, yeah, I've played before. I do it. No. Ended up running one of the fastest 40s at the camp. Got signed that day, and then started played for the Giants a couple of years.
Isn't that a movie?
Well, that's it. But then he blew his knee out. They didn't want to re-sign him. He got shipped to the Patriots. The Patriots didn't want to sign him, but they at the time had an affiliation with the Alouettes. So they shipped him to Montreal, which is where he met my mother, who came from Manitoba and wanted to live in the big city because she didn't want to live in Saint-Sulpice anymore. She didn't want to live in a small town. She wanted to go to like a big, she wanted to go to like a metropolitan area, and she heard that Montreal was the shit. But same thing. So like when I was younger, I'm the first one. Me and my sister are the first ones to be born in Quebec. Like we're the first Quebecers here. My dad's first Canadian of my dad's family. But when my father, so I think it was probably about, I think I was about 8 or 9. My mom was working as a personal assistant to a company that was to the president of a company who used to build uniforms. He used to make uniforms for like hospitals, military, all this kind of stuff, everything. I remember
that's what my family business is into.
Well, that's it. So yeah, so it was called White Sisters. I remember it was this big company or whatever. But when my mom lost her job, same deal. She was a little bit lost, but the weird thing that she told me, I remember her telling me when she was younger, because I was like, Mom, you're not going to work anymore. Like, what are you going to do? And I remember I was giving her, like, weirdly at that age, like I knew how to like look in the newspaper. So I would give her like pamphlets of like, hey, look, Ralph Lauren in Montreal is looking for, because she was in that same industry. She's like, I don't want to do that anymore. She's like, I want to be in charge of my own business. I want to do my own thing. I don't want to pay attention to anybody else. I don't want to serve anybody else. I don't want my ability to earn money to be dependent on anybody else. So she opened up her own cleaning service, which is named after my father, Al's Janitorial Service. So she was doing that up until about like 5 years ago. But I had a similar experience to you guys, where growing up, we'd always go with my mother to go clean houses. So like I'd be in the houses of these people who are fucking super wealthy, cleaning their house, you know, like here's my mom, she's vacuuming, she's like, go clean the windows, go do this, go grab this, go bring it down there. So I had the same upbringing where I don't think I necessarily learned about the value of a dollar, but I learned about hard work. And I learned about always having hard work being the backbone and making sure that you could do something to be happy. Because that, as long as you worked hard, you'd always have the opportunity to make money. You know what I mean?
Can we talk about working hard for a sec? Like,
yeah,
I'd love to know what your stance on working hard to make a living is today, because I'm moving away from that. Like I do not want to work 7 days a week. I do not want to work 100 hours a week, and I'm not. And I want to find, you know, automated ways to make income. I want to find ways that I can live my life, work a little bit here and there, and then make my money make me money. And that's the topic that we're here for, is like the money part, right? And so I'm moving my mentality, and I'm sure we've all heard this before, about me working hard versus make my money work hard.
Right.
And that's kind of where I'm shifting my attention now, because the harder my money works, the more free time I have, the more time I have to live life, be happy, and worry less about where my money's coming from. And at first, like right now, I'm taking a hit in terms of how much money I make a year by thinking this way, but my projections are going to be like 5-10 times in a couple of years, versus if I were to stay on the same path of working super hard for someone and then just being, you know, dished out in a second. And I don't know what you guys' opinion is on that right now, especially with our different realities.
I'll chime in on that. I mean, it's extremely scary to think that, you know, working hard versus making your money work hard for you. One is that it's proven that if you work hard, you stick to what you're doing, you stay consistent, that there will always be a path for you forward. It doesn't necessarily mean that you'll have financial freedom, but it does not necessarily guarantee, but it's pretty good odd that if you continue to work hard, things will essentially stay status quo and good for you. The knowledge it takes to be able to automate your life around, you know, income generation and investments or intelligent investments, I don't think most people have that knowledge. I mean, frankly, as far as I've gotten into my career, I don't even know if I've had that knowledge.
No, we're left behind a little bit. I speak to some young kids. Like I got a little cousin who started a business, and I'm hearing him talk about like what he's doing with his money. And I'm like, yeah, buddy, me too.
It's crazy, right? Because I mean, you're looking at like that whole shit that happened with Wall Street Bets, and these got like these 18, 19-year-olds who are investing like $1,000 in GameStop so that they could grow their cash. I'm like, fuck. I'm like, I remember when I got like $1,000 at 18, 19. Like, I think I blew it all on shoes. Like, it's like I wasn't thinking about the market.
Yeah, I mean, but you see, it kind of comes back to what we were talking about before this was being recorded, is that there's this new accessibility to information. Like, you know, Elon Musk said that, like, screw school, because all the information you really need to be rich is on the internet.
Yeah.
It's there. If you are obsessed and you're reading and you're researching about it and you go into it, then you're going to learn it and you'll be able to do it. You know, and I think it comes with, you know, it comes with time and experience. And like, I wouldn't say that young people shouldn't work hard. I think they should. They should create that pathway like Parham was suggesting. And it's, I mean, that's how I've come to where I am. And, you know, it's just consistent and repetitive on certain things that brought me to a certain path. And it was a lot of risk taking and a lot of hard work. And for many years, I wasn't making any money, but I was still working. You know, and then all of a sudden you hit like this tipping point, and at that point you start to understand, okay, how this all works and what it is. And for example, our festivals are automated. What I do on social media, I'm actually looking for someone. I'm hiring an executive, online executive assistant to completely manage like my social stuff. You know, so like I don't have to like bother about it, and it'll generate income. And then like, you know, my consulting as well. Like I developed a team, and those people are happy working hard for their money. So like I just get them to do it. And it's like letting go too, you know, like for the first time I'm starting to let go of things like roles that I've had where I wanted control, and I'm like, oh, you want to do it? Go ahead, go and do it.
Right.
And just
No, it's interesting because I think we all had a similar experience in our upbringing. Like even for me personally, because like I said, my dad had no education, right? And he was completely open and honest about like, listen, I don't know shit. He's like, I'm lucky. Like I played football. I got like a pretty decent job working at L'Oreal for 32 years. So like I got the insurance, I got whatever, but he's like, I worked in a warehouse for 30 years. I work with a bunch of racist French guys who hated my guts, but I did it because I love you guys. You know what I mean? Because I love my family and I want to take care of my family. He's like, there's a lot of shit I dealt with that I just knew this is what I had to deal with to make a living, to make sure that we all had a roof over our head. He's like, but I don't want that for you. I want something different for you. But at the same time, the weird thing is, like you're saying, the definition of working hard, what I learned from my parents is you just go to work. Like my father woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning, got to work for 6, worked till 3:30, came back home, took like ate dinner, took like an hour nap, woke back up, and then him and my mom would go out at the evening to go work, to go clean like an office building before it opened in the morning or something like that. And they would do this like 6 out of 7 days of the week. And I remember sitting there and thinking about it, and I'm like, I don't want to do this when I'm older. Like I don't want to be in this perpetual. And my mother would supplement, I guess, a lot of the hard work that they would do, because my mother's addicted to hard work. Like if she's not working hard and getting shit done, I think she starts to get depressed a bit. But she would give us stuff to supplement these things. So if I was going to help her at nighttime, and then I would, you know, come home at 10 o'clock at night, do my homework, fall asleep, wake up in the morning, go to football, do whatever, you know, she would be like, oh, well, here's a new pair of gloves. Here's a sweater. Here's something, you know, like to give me some kind of like reward for working hard, which was okay. But when I look back on it, I think I much would have rather just had my mom at home, like just being able to sit at home and watch TV as a family, which we do every once in a while. But it's something that's driven me, and even to an extent, like my girlfriend, is that we watched our parents, and I guess it's the same thing for you guys. Maybe it's the generation before us, where it was this ideal of that you need to work constantly, and if you outwork the other guys, you'll have more. And if you have more, you're better than everybody else. Like you can attain more. If there's nothing you can't ascertain through through some kind of like wealth exchange, you're okay. But I'm finding now, at least within our generation, that we're starting to look at it like, I don't know if I really need to go buy, you know, a G-Wagon. I don't know if I need to go have an expensive watch. I don't know if I need to. I know you need to have one. That's fine. Listen, I don't need to have 30 pairs of shoes, but I do. It's because it makes me happy. You know what I mean? But for the most part, yeah, it's like, even when it comes to work now, it's like I'm in a profession where, well, obviously it's been hit hugely since COVID, but I could go out and train 6 hours a day. I could go train 6 different people. I could push my ass. I could do all this kind of stuff. But in all honesty, I kind of like the factor that I can control my own schedule, and that I can see the clients I want to see, and that I could be with, you know what I mean? And that I could pick and choose and help the people who I want to help. And yes, it may result in me making a little bit less money. I may not have as many followers on, you know, social media. I may not, you know, whatever, but there's a certain level of relaxation in my mind that I have, because I know that I'm doing things on terms that I'm capable of doing. I'm not overextending myself, so that when I get to the people who I really care about, you know, my girlfriend, my family, my daughter, all that kind of stuff, like I don't worry. Like I have that reserve in the tank to be with them and give them like my full attention. I'm not complaining about tired. I'm not complaining about the lack of money I don't have. Like for me, I just feel like this is a better balance for me.
Blake, that brings me, like, as you're talking, it made me kind of envision. I know we're talking about wealth, and then I was just kind of like digging into the idea of what wealth means. And I know that financial wealth and income is one big aspect of it, but especially in a family life and in your own surroundings, wealth and value, or even capital, is not only measured in dollars, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your morals, the family values that you have, the cultural capital that you're bringing with you, the history, the time that is spent between you, your loved ones, your family. I mean, that all accumulates to something that also accumulates to wealth, and that's cultural wealth. So
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, there's a lot of, wealth comes in a lot of forms. It comes, it's not just always just money. It could be in terms of happiness as well, and knowledge and wisdom, because that's what ends up happening. You get culture, you become wise, you become more open-minded, you can let things go easily, and then all of a sudden you become happier person. And for me personally, it's not a question about choosing, and that's something that I'm going through even at this current moment. Like, I've realized that happiness is not the number of zeros I have in my bank account, and I realized that also, if you have too many zeros at the end of a nice number in your bank account, it might even bring problems to your family, to your relationships, to the way you view the world. But at the same time, I don't want to let that go, because it does, let's be honest, it brings comfort. And in comfort, we get to talk as we do. If we weren't in this situation that we are in, which we need to be grateful for, with a home, with a family, with, people ready to help us, and the ability to buy shoes whenever you feel like, for that fraction of a second that makes you happy, like, we are blessed to be in that situation. If you were to take us and put us in a different kind of situation, then the answer is work hard, hustle, get out there, put yourself out there, be vulnerable, make something happen. Mm-hmm. We're a little bit blessed in our situation. We can think, okay, let's put aside, the hustle to make money, and focus on our happiness, and then bring in the variable that, it's been COVID for a year. Like, we've been in this different zone. So it's an easy step to take, because we're not out there anymore. I'm not with these guys going for these dinners and having, these fine wines and wearing super cool sweaters and trying to impress anyone. I'm not put in that situation anymore. So therefore, I feel like, oh, I don't need to, and so forth. So the real test will come again once you get yourself back out there. But it's.
Do you miss it at all?
Look, I'm gonna be honest. I don't.
That's good. That's good.
I'm very happy at the moment.
No, I'm proud of you, bud. That's good. That's very good.
I've got a good schedule going on. I've been able to reflect on what I need, and understand that another 100K in my life is not going to change anything. Mm-hmm. And you have to work super fucking hard for another 100K, but you might not need to work as hard, 10 times as hard, to make $1 million. Mm-hmm. And I think that's like my thing. Like, I hear stories every day where one guy comes to me and he's like, "Oh shit, I made 100 million yesterday." I swear to God, Wow. And it happens, where one day to the next, But if you're focusing and only trying to get that 100 or that extra 100 or extra 50, and you're going to give all those hours in, that's the difference between work hard versus making money work hard. That's what I think. And I think, and it's about building equity. You got to build that equity on what you have. You can't let that go either. So if you have something that can build in terms of brand equity or monetary equity, that's super important.
I'm curious to see what your opinion is. And I was speaking to a recent university graduate a couple of days ago, and they came to me asking, hey, how do I plan my next moves and getting into my career? What are your thoughts around doing something that you love to make money versus doing something that makes money so that you can do what you love?
I think you got to do both.
That's the difference between me and my dad right there. My dad does work so that he can play golf all the time. My dad works and plays golf. Guess what happened? At one point in his life, he's like, damn it, I just optimized my entire work because he hated it so much. He automated the whole damn thing, and he's like, okay, well, I guess I'll just keep playing golf, which didn't work out for him. It didn't work.
Right.
It didn't work. He was like semi-retired at 40. Some of us are over 40. You know, like he was home, and my mom and dad were like bickering all the time because my dad started treating the house like it was his factory. And then and next thing, and he's like, all right, I got to bounce. So he went back to Africa to work. He went back to Botswana to join the family business.
Right.
Whereas if you can get into your ikigai, you know, and and I tell everybody I hire anything before they come and join us, I tell me what your ikigai is, because if you're not working in there, you're not working for me. Passion overlaps with what you're good at, overlaps with what the world needs. You get into that zone, it doesn't become work, personal life. It's all the same.
That's right.
It's all the same. For me, like that's what I'm striving for. And for my wife too, Abe's like really jumped into that more too. You know, she's been DJing and doing stuff where like it didn't represent her anymore, doing these parties and everything. And it was holding her back from really being able to excel in that market. And then COVID came and she's had the ability to rethink things. And now she's expressing what she loves, what the world needs, and her passion all through this new project that she's doing. And I've never seen her so, you know, driven.
It's a double-edged
and happy.
sword, though, Naeem. You know, when you think that if you want to get into Ikigai at the beginning of your career, there is a notion of experience and the wisdom you have in what you're doing that takes time, like the grinding, you know, paying your dues. There is a fine balance between getting into something because it'll give you experience versus doing something that you love from the get-go. I think that you need a mix of both.
You're right. You're totally right. But the thing is that what the world needs, your passion and what you're good at is always changing and always evolving as well.
Yeah.
All right. So if you start on something, think about the present moment. Think about like the moment you're in right now. What are you good at? What does the world need? And what's your passion about? Go in there. If it changes, it changes. Yeah. You know, and it evolves, and it evolves you. But like, I did too. Like, you know, and it doesn't need to be so hard coded. Like I was working in retail, selling shoes, you know, because I liked shoes. And I had a discount on the shoe, and I got to buy the shoe, and I got to, you know, wear the shoe in a place where people respected the shoe, and, you know, like, you know, it just could be as simple as that at that point in time, you know, and like, for example, like Blake, you know, you made a jump at one point, right?
Yeah, I quit I was going along after I finished school. I didn't know what I wanted to do because I graduated, you know, psych and soc, and there wasn't really, I mean, aside from going to master's, but I knew in myself, I'm like, I don't want to go to school anymore. I'm like, I'm done with school. Like I need some kind of like actual, like I need work life, because this is a problem. This is something that happens with athletes, right? This is something that as athletes, we don't think about. And I think the outside world doesn't think about. When you're an athlete, all that life experience that you gain in your teens and your early 20s. So, you know, like Parham, like when you were going to work with your uncle in California and you're in the computer store and that kind of stuff. And like Naeem, what you're saying, you're working in the family business, you know, when you're doing those kind of things, it's cerebral, but you realize that you're getting acclimated to how the world works. Like you're getting used to being in these trades and everything. And you understand the business and how to go for jobs and stuff and everything. All I was doing was I was playing sports. When I started getting jobs, it was I'd go work on a construction yard. I'd go do landscaping. I'd go do stuff that was physical, that I would like literally shut my brain off for like 5, 6, 7 hours a day. And then I'd go to the gym and work out. I'd go run track. And then I'd get back and I'd go do football again. Because this was my obsession. It's like you said, when you do what you love, you just keep working and you don't think about it as like it's work, right? The problem is that it doesn't apply as far as work ethic goes. It applies, but as far as job experience, as far as understanding business ethics, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, it's embarrassing as a 20-year-old to go or like a 22, 23-year-old to go to a job interview or to apply for a job And you got to put shit about athletics on your fucking CV. Like you're putting these very minimal things of where you worked and all this kind of stuff. When I got out of university, when I finished university and I realized I wasn't going to go pro, I'm sitting there with Jen, my girlfriend, in our apartment one night. And I'm like, fuck it. I'm just going to go get a factory job. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to go to, I'm like, listen, if I was on the other side of the table from me and I was looking at my CV, I'd be like, where's your experience? Like,
you're wrong.
Where's your
like you
know what I mean?
I disagree with you, man.
I know, but listen.
First of all, you shouldn't be embarrassed. You know, for me, I look at
no, it's not even a question of embarrassment.
Incredible people on this earth.
For sure,
especially today, our athletes are like, and to be able 100%. To get to any point is
100%
a lot,
and without a doubt. But the problem is that in athletics, unless you're in that upper echelon, so unless you're playing pro or you're marketable, let's put it that way, you don't mean shit. Like this is the statistic they always tell you in football. Out of all the kids you play football with, you're going to lose about, about every year you play, you lose about 45% of the kids you played football with every year. So which means every year you get older, you're losing about 45%, 45%, 45%, 45%. Till you get to about like college level. College level, you lose like 94% of the kids you played football with. So 94% of those kids who played football and are trying to aspire to be where you are, gone. Mm-hmm. Of that whatever 6% that you have, point something, I think it's like 0.08% are going to play professionally. So now it's like the ridiculous of like how many of those people actually have the opportunity, and then of those people, 2% become marketable, like of the LeBron James, the Michael Jordans, the Tom Brady's, that kind of stuff. Like it's such a small thing of where your feats are acknowledged and admired. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't find anything wrong with that. It's just, for me, it's the same thing in business. How many Elon Musks are you going to meet? How many Jeff Bezos are you going to meet? Not very many. You know what I mean? These people are like you know, they are the pit.
I don't think you want to be those people.
I don't but I'm just saying, as far as making a living and doing these things, it's different. But anyways,
guys that don't have there's those guys, right? That have a tremendous amount of pressure on their life, and then there's like millions of people who are living humble lives, making $5 million a year.
For sure, 100%. And I'm not doubting that. There's like, you know, there's a couple of guys who make a couple of million, and then there's the guys who make 50 million. I'm like, well, I wouldn't mind being the guy who makes like $1 million. I'm good with that. That's fine. But I'm just saying, as far as when experience-wise, when you're in that age range, when you're in that like early 20s, right? Like you're competing with other people whom have worked in offices, done all this kind of stuff. Like I was even talking to like my girlfriend at that age. She had worked in multiple offices. She had done data research. She had done graphic design. She had done, you know, like mathematics and this kind of stuff. She'd done all these different things because she had the opportunity to do so. And I never take anything away from my youth and how I grew up, because that was all part of it. But just to say, when I got out, I really felt like I was so behind the curve of, I need to know how to work in real life. I need to know how to work outside of this athletic community, because that's not how the world works. You know what I mean? So when I went from working at a factory to then putting myself through design school while I was working at that factory, to then getting a design job and then working for other people, like working for Chateau, and then going to work in the porn company because I thought it was going to be a good jump. And it turned out it was meh. I was like, whatever. But once I stopped working there, like you said, I had that time to reflect, like you did, you know, a couple of years ago, where I was like, I need to do what I love, because if I do what I love, I'm not going to come home being tired. I'm not going to care that if I've got to work I've got to work till 3 a.m. None of this is going to matter, because I'll fight for what I want. It's got to be like when I played sports. I'm willing to put in 16 hours if I need to. I don't always need to, but if I do need to, I've got to be willing to do it. and I've got to want to, it's got to come from my heart. It's got to come from like inside of me that I'm not willing to stop until I have completed this feat. You know what I mean? And that was something that I learned. And then when I went into, you know, personal training and I went into fitness, I was like, this is where I belong. This is what I should be doing. Like, maybe I'm not going to be millions, and maybe I'm not going to be, what's his name? Not the Bowflex guy, the Tybo guy, whatever, the bald dude. I forget his name. I saw a commercial with him the other way. That's why he's popping into my head. But, you know, maybe I'm not going to be these dudes, but I don't care. Because, like, to go back to what you said, because I love what I do. I love helping people. I love helping people get fit.
You need to be Blake.
That's it. I get to be me now.
Blake. And you know what? When I came to work out with you, I didn't really care about the actual workout itself. Like, I don't need to be any different physically, you know. And I do give goals because we're there together. It was like therapy.
Yeah.
You know, and you wouldn't have that if you didn't have your background, your educational background, and everything. You wouldn't be able to give that to me.
For sure.
And you know, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Like,
for
sure. Yeah, it's a tricky. This whole world is tricky right now, you know, and it's a tough place. And I think the more we're able to think mindfully about money, the more we're able to be in the moment, and think about what we need, dwell less about the past, speculate less about the future. And one little piece of advice that I'm gonna share here that I got from Parham's father-in-law and my brother-in-law. It is pretty great.
It's crazy that you're all like in the same
family,
little. I'm like, I feel like I'm out of the loop. Like, I'm like, wait a second,
Uncle Naeem.
Did I miss a cousin or something? Like, was I supposed to marry into the family or what?
Honorary, yeah.
Yeah. So I go to Johan and I'm like, yo, Johan, I got a plan. You know, and it's like some work that we're working on. He's mentoring me, he's helping me, he's coaching me on a bunch of stuff. And he's like, oh yeah, cool. What's the plan B though?
Right.
And I'm like,
yeah.
He's like, always have a plan.
I'll be back.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, he didn't even want to hear the plan. He's like, if you think the plan's good, the plan's good. Tell me your plan B though. That's the exciting one.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, there you go. They always have a plan B. Yeah. That's
a good point. But so to kind of wrap around, so from family wise, when your family talks about, like, when you guys families, you get together and stuff and they talk about what you do, like my father, I mean, he has dementia, so his brain's a little not there all the time, but he's like, so what do you do again? I'm like, Dad, I'm a personal trainer. Like, that's it. He's like, so you train people? I'm like, yes. He's like, and that pays bills? I'm like, yes, Dad, it pays bills. Like, it works. He's like, okay. He's like, you sure, right? I'm like, God damn it, Dad. Jesus Christ. You're killing me here.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Same,
but yeah.
Same here. The same thing. My parents are always wondering. My family's always wondering how the hell I'm making a living. They don't understand. They're like, you what? How? What do you do? I don't see you work. But if you ask them truly, they'll say like, I'm like the hardest worker they know, and like, you know, and this is what we were talking about earlier, working super hard and passionate. I think passion drives more than money. So you overlap those two, and you know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that for me, love, wealth, it doesn't really mix well. I think being good at what you do, for at least from my perspective, what drives me. You know, I don't necessarily have to love what I do, but as long as I'm good at it, it'll allow me to create room for the things that I truly love. And what I love is spending time with my friends and my family, and you know, and doing things that add that kind of like intrinsic value to my life. The dollars, you know, that I chase, it will always be the means to the end. You know, it's truly just the vehicle that's helping me get to that place where I want to experience, you know, that the freedom that I have. You know, I do love what you know, my line of work, but I'm not in love with my line of work.
Right.
So we differentiate that. And I don't think I'm more focused now, not so much on what I'm doing today, but making sure that I retire safely, making sure that I can pass something on to kids if I, you know, end up having kids one day. you know, having property to pass on, that generational wealth that I can accumulate.
Right.
Because I'll reflect it, and maybe I've been just programmed this way, but I just want to extend the opportunities that I didn't have to my future of kin. You know, the same ways that my parents made the sacrifices they made, not living their best life, but to make sure that we have a footing to start our best life.
And you see, that's really important, because that's something in the Black community that we do not understand for the most part. The whole thing of you talking about how, like, you're trying to set up, like we talked about it the other day when we were training, you're setting a platform a little bit higher than where you are, so that when your people come in, your family comes in, they come in on that platform. And then their job is to raise that platform a little bit higher. I was listening to a podcast, I Am Athlete podcast, and they were talking about it with a guy named Wale, who's a financial advisor. He's like really high up there, Black dude, super, super smart. But what he was saying is that in the Black community, for the most part, the problem has been when you get rich or when you start to attain a lot of wealth, what ends up happening is you end up going, what he called, backwards with your wealth. So what do? You start handing out money to your parents. You start handing out money to your friends, your sisters, your cousins. You start taking care of them. The problem is that that's all good and fine that you're doing that. And in a certain instance, if you were doing that in terms of you were providing employment, or you were providing them a way to where whatever you were doing, they're adding to your position, meaning they're bettering your system, and in turn, they're bettering their own. That's cool. But the problem is that a lot of them get caught up in this situation where people end up subsequenting all their wealth to appeasing all the people around them and not leaving anything in terms of what their next generation will carry on. Generational wealth is very new in the Black community. It's a very new concept. It's a very new thing. Like seeing the Jordans and all these kind of thing of these guys starting multi-billion-dollar corporations, at least in the Western world, is something that's really new for us to see. And it's something that's driving a change in the mentality as to what we picture wealthy being, you know, as opposed to the dudes who would, you know, drive the Maseratis or get the Bentleys, the Phantoms, have huge watches, have gold teeth, all this kind of stuff. It's starting to change. The dynamic is starting to change now to where we're like, well, what's your 401k like? What's your TFSA like? How many, like, what businesses do you own? You know, what's the property value of what you have? How is your portfolio growing? You know what I mean? What are you using your education for? You know, how is your business? It's starting to go in a very good direction. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have like this discussion with you guys is because you guys growing up differently than I did. It's interesting to see immigrants or immigrant families who kind of got this idea implanted them, like you said, Naeem, so early that like the idea of that, this costs this, you need to have that. That's not something we like in the Black community. A lot of us grow up with. We grow up with the idea of that you need to make enough money to survive, and you need to survive however it is you can. Like you need to find safety and survive, and then you take care of the people who take care of you. You know what I mean? But again, that leads to the level of us not setting up for the next. Like we just bottom out, and then the next generation has to do the same thing. We don't move up. We stay on the same tier. And then we wonder why, well, we're working so fucking hard to get to a level to where we feel equal to everybody else. But in essence, we're not actually progressing. We're just living. You know what I mean? So it's just really interesting. It's interesting to hear you guys talk about how like it's a different, because it's weird. Like Blacks are like immigrants, but we're here, like we've grown up here. You know what I mean? We're like consistent landed immigrants. Like we're in the system, but we're almost in the system that exists outside of the system that we actually should be working in. So it's really interesting to hear you two guys talk about like the difference in like, you know, like Naeem, you saying your dad always like talking about, you know, this is worth this, make sure that you've got money put aside. Or even Parham, like, you know, you talk about, you know, your dad making sure that, you know, the business is taken care of, that you can afford to get the education that you want to push and preserve and to push yourself forward. You know what I mean? Whereas for us, it's kind of like, well, we do this, so you're going to do this. So this is how we're going to do it. You know what I mean? So It's very cool to hear you guys talk about that back and forth, and even all the other lessons too of what you guys are talking about. It's very endearing, because I think it's very important that we don't get so clouded into the boxes that we're in, that we don't just funnel our understanding from our own experience, or even the experience of people within our own community, like our small, like our symbol communities. That if we outreach into, like, like if blacks look to, how does the Iranian community deal with it? How does the Indian community deal with it? And then they look at, well, how does the black promote whatever? Like, how do we all do this together? I think we just get a better overview of like the different avenues we can all take part in to make things work properly. You know what I mean?
I mean, hearing you guys talk, I mean, it does give me a moment to pause and a sigh of relief and gratefulness. I think so often we're head down, push forward, and don't take that moment to appreciate what we have accumulated and like the efforts that we've gained over our lifespans. And again, like passing down from what our parents are doing, what we're doing, what we're going to push forward. We're not alone in this. I think we're all experiencing a bit of the similar type of circumstances, and especially with the COVID era. So I don't think that there is a one size fits all format to any of this. But following what feels comfortable is, I think that will be the norm.
I think finding
we're all
that
in different
drive.
Places. We're all in different places, like Parham, you're like at the phase where my father was in a way, and I'm acting like how your kids will act, because you're trying to collect some wealth to give to your family. Well, my dad did that. He's still here and he hasn't given to us, but but I can take all these risks, and I'm grateful for that. I can take risks, and my dad will straight up call me on the phone and tell me, hey, if you got a crazy idea, do it, because if you fuck up, I'm here. That's what I'm here for. I have that. I need to acknowledge the fact that I have that. If you want to call it privilege, maybe it's privilege.
No,
but
it's not privilege.
But
it's not a privilege.
But my dad came here, started his business so that he could create a good foundation for all of us to choose what we want to do. Yeah. To choose.
And you know what? Exactly. But you know what? The reason why I don't like the word privilege is because I feel like privilege removes the ideal that we work to get to where we are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you can't say it's a privilege, because it's not a privilege. It's something your family earned a position to do. Your family, blood, sweat, and tears, traveled. Like, I mean, look, even globally, look, India. So like you're on the most eastern part of the world, over into Africa, and then to Canada. Like your parents traversed the planet to get to the position to where they are to make a life for themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even Parham's family, like Iran to Paris to Montreal, like, and then even the family he has in the West Coast, like, it's huge. Like, and that shouldn't be looked at like the thing with when people say privilege.
I'm still gonna go ahead and say, like, there's a bit of privilege that I've had growing up with. Like, I can't deny that. Like neighborhoods, friends, access.
Sure, yeah. But that's also you putting yourself in a good position because your parents put yourself in a position. You know what I mean? Again, for me, it's all about tiers. It's about you build a platform to where your family can springboard off of, and you carry that out. Like you work that position. Like my parents, like I said, they work like 16, 17-hour days. They don't know how I make money working not that much. They don't understand it. My mother is the most nervous person when it comes to money, and she always thinks I'm going to be poor and broke. And I'm like, Mom, I'm okay. Like, it's fine. We're good. I promise you we're okay. Like,
maybe that's
everyone's going to make money and we're fine. Like, I had to show her that I started to have investments. And then she was like, oh, you are grown up. I'm like, yeah, Mom. Yeah. Yes, I get it. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
just the other day, my mom's like, all I want is for you to be happy. Abe turns around, she's like, we are happy. Be grateful, we are happy.
I'm good. I promise. The house is not on fire. We're good. I can raise, you know what I mean? I can raise children. We're good. Oh, actually, you know what? This is quick. Last little thing we'll talk about. In your community, so we are talking about, wealth in the community and stuff. all of us having mixed race children, or soon, whenever we will have mixed race, like, Naeem, you have yours, I have mine. Parham, when he has, with his wife being, he's going to have a mixed race kid. Do you see it being like, are you a little worried about having a mixed race kid? Are you like, do you kind of look at it like, how do I carry on tradition? Do I go whatever? Does it put a little thought in your head, or is it just like, fuck it? It's like, it don't matter. Like, they're going to be what they're going to be. Like, let's just, let's move from that point. For me, I think about it because my daughter's like a quarter black. So I'm like, she's going to be cool, but I'm always afraid, like, if she goes and says something, cool. Whatever. No, but she's going to be cool. She's going to be great. She's going to be super smart. But I'm always, cool. Yeah, I'm like, she's got enough in it. You know what I mean? She can't get in trouble. She won't be canceled ever. Be like, no, my dad's half black. Oh, okay, you're good. Don't worry about it. My grandfather's full black. Yeah, I get it. But are you ever like worried about, your kids playing in that, like, that realm? Not playing in that realm, but just like, I don't want to say forgetting their roots, but like being in that weird middle tier of.
Blake, what's your daughter's name?
Monroe.
Yeah. So do you feel like that name represents like her culture or her upbringing or her color or tradition in any way?
Well, her name is Monroe Jolie Nadeau Butler. So we took Jolie, so she had a French name to represent her, like, the French people in her family. And then Monroe was just because Aurora Monroe, because I'm a comic book nerd, so Storm. I wanted to name it Monroe, like M-U-N-R, but Jen's like, no. And I was like, can we name her Aurora? She's like, you're fucking nuts. I'm like, okay, how just Monroe? Is that good? She's like, that's fine. We'll name her Monroe. Like, good. All right. So always like, it does have a little twinge of like, black African superhero represents part of her, the French side, and her, with her French name. So if their teachers ever can't pronounce mixed. Monroe, she's mixed. She's mixed up. Yeah. It's the same thing. Like, I'm Blake Kelsey Joseph Butler. You know what I mean? So it's like, I've got a bunch of weird fucking English names that don't mean anything. So I wanted to have a name for her that followed her lineage. You know what I mean? A little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, my son's like half Indian and half Quebecois, or half white, I guess. I'm pretty pale and extremely assimilated for growing up in Boucherville. So that's why I asked about the name, because it was important for me to give him a name that one day maybe have him question and be curious about. Yeah. So we went with Zane to kind of like hold on to that culture, because culture and tradition ends up becoming in the heart and in the mind, and not necessarily through the color of your skin, hopefully. That's it. And so that's how I see it. Zane's really pale right now, and he's quite young, so we don't really see that. He speaks English and French, but in his school, there's kids who speak 3 languages even. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, like for now, and based on what we've been talking about, I try to push Zane towards doing things that makes him happy and giving him
for sure
space and room, and for sure. I think culture is very important. He's going to get it from his grandparents on both sides. Yeah, and I put that responsibility on them for now. And we'll see.
It's like that's your problem. That's not.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd be too worried in that perspective. I know history is important. I know culture is important, but to Naeem's point, I think their experience of their life and what makes them happy and what they're going through that's more of my focus. So I know I'm 100% Iranian, and Kaya is a quarter Haitian and a mix of other white backgrounds, but I see a person, I know that
for sure.
I know that there's a DNA mixed in all of this, and the historical value of that is important. But moving like in the world where you have the internet and you have cross pollination of information across all these different cultures, I actually the lines are very blurred. So I'm more focused on what are the good values, what are the good morals, than how do you fit in terms of nationality and whatnot.
That's fair.
And
That's
I think when one individual holds different identities, what happens is it starts to break down barriers and as well. Because, like, for example, I've always kind of struggled with who the hell I am. You know, I've forced to become Quebecois, almost like by a stick, right? Growing up here in Quebec. But then I have this Indian connection with, like, my blood is Indian, but none of my family's ever lived there. They all lived in Africa from my great grandparents, you know? So, like, I'm African, but I'm not black, but I connect way more with African people. But then you become curious and you become sensitive to their problems and issues, and then you try to, like, help and, like, you know, and I become sensitive about the life that Indians live. I become sensitive about the life Africans live in Africa, and it opens up my mind to saying, like, hey, we need to think of ourselves more equally, because I see myself as equally, you know, of all the parts that I'm made out of. So hopefully that's what happens with the kids that are mixed and come to the world.
100%. You know? Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I don't want to take any more of your time. I know we're all got schedules. We all got shit to do, but thank you so much. We'll definitely do this again. We'll talk about, you know, something different. But yeah, this is absolutely amazing. And I appreciate this. And I love you guys so much. And as soon as we can see each other in person, we'll definitely do that. Cool?
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Appreciate you, boys.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you guys.
All right, boys.
Take care.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Appreciate it.
All right. Much love.
And we are good.